You are a senator with your wife beside you, her silk stroller draped elegantly across her shoulders, having received the honor. Though you now question whether honor is the right word to dine with Emperor Caligula in his magnificent palace on the Palatine Hill. The marble floors gleam under flickering oil lamps, their light dancing across frescoed walls that seem to watch with painted eyes. Your wife's hand trembles slightly in yours as you enter the Troika Minium, the dining hall, where Rome's most powerful men recline on couches, arranged around low tables laden with delicacies from across the empire. You see other senators with dark faces, the usual political bluster replaced by the casual expressions of men walking through a minefield. Marcus Lepidus, avoid your gaze entirely. His knuckles white as he grips his wine cup guide to Sonia, stares at his plate of honeyed dormouse, as if the tiny creatures might spring back to life and offer him escape. The usual dinner conversation. Complaints about grain shipments. Debates over provincial taxes. Gossip about gladiator matches has died in their throats. Everybody is silenced by fear. The kind of fear that makes powerful men feel like children again, waiting to discover whether they've pleased or displeased an unpredictable father. Caligula claps his hands, the sound sharp as breaking bone in the oppressive quiet. My dear friends, he announces, his voice, honey, sweet, but with an edge that could cut class. Tonight, we celebrate not just the bounty of Rome, but the flexibility of Roman virtue. His smile spreads across his face like oil, across water. Beautiful and somehow wrong. I've been thinking about marriage lately. About vows. About what belongs to whom. His eyes pale, blue and luminous, scanned the room like a predator selecting prey. Tell me, senators, what is the most sacred bond in Roman society? The question hangs in the air like incense, thick and cloying. You feel your wife's hand tightening. Yours, her breathing shallow. Around the room, men who command legions and governed provinces suddenly look like rabbits, sensing a wolf's approach. This is Gaius Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, but everyone calls him Caligula, Little Boot, the nickname his father's soldiers gave him when he was a child, following the legions dressed in miniature military gear. That child had grown into something else entirely. Senator Flavius clears his throat, his voice cracking slightly. The marriage bonds Caesar between husband and wife. The words emerge like a confession, though, of what crime? None can say precisely. Caligula springs to his feet, with the liquid grace of a dancer, his purple stripe, toga swirling around him. Marriage. That sacred institution that binds two souls. Two bodies, two destinies together. He begins to paint between the dining couches, his shambled feet silent on the marble. But what happens when a god desires what belongs to a mortal? What then? My philosophical friends, the temperature in the room seems to drop despite the braziers burning in each corner. You notice Senator Cassius has gone completely pale. His wife, a stunning woman named Livia, with dark eyes and auburn hair, sitting rigid beside him, as if carved from marble herself. She's caught Caligula's attention before. Everyone knows it. The way his gaze lingers on her now confirms your worst suspicions. In the old stories, Caligula continues, his voice taking on the rhythm of a priest delivering an augury. Zips took whatever woman struck his fancy. Europa leader Io, their husband's claims meant nothing to the king of gods. He stops directly in front of Cassius' couch, looking down at the senator, and his wife and I have been declared divine by the Senate itself, have I not? Divine honors, divine privileges, divine appetites. The silence stretches like a bolstering pull to its breaking point. Through the open windows, you can hear the distant sounds of Rome at night, carts rumbling over cobblestones, dogs barking the calls of night watchmen. Normal sounds from a normal world that feels suddenly very far away. Livia Caligula says softly, extending his hand toward Cassius, his wife. Such a beautiful name, wasn't that, Augustus? His wife's name as well. Before she was Augustus, his wife, of course. She belonged to another man then. The implication hangs heavy as lead. Stand up there. Let everyone admire the craftsmanship of the gods who shaped you. Cassius, his face cycles through expressions. Shock, rage, calculation, defeat in the span of heartbeats. You've seen him command armies, negotiate with barbarian kings, stand unmoved as gladiators died at his feet. Now, he looks like a man watching his house burn down, knowing that any attempt to save it will only spread the flames. Livia rises slowly, her dignity intact, even as her world crumbles around her. She's been trained from birth for this moment, though not this specific scenario. Trained to be the perfect Roman matron, to honor her husband, to embody virtue. But virtue becomes a luxury when gods make demands. Beautiful girl, Caligula murmurs, circling her like a buyer, examining a horse at market. The curve of her neck, the way the light catches her hair. Cassius, you've been blessed by fortune. Indeed. His hand traces the air just above her shoulder, not quite touching, but close enough that she shivers. But fortune is fickle, isn't it? What she gives to one man, she might give to another. The other wives around the room have become statues, each one acutely aware that she might be next. Your own wife's breathing has become so shallow, you fear she might faint. The servants who usually bustle about refilling wine cups and clearing plates have disappeared, as if they sense the approaching storm and seek shelter. There's something I want to show you all, Caligula announces suddenly, his mood shifting like quicksilver, a new addition to the palace. Something I think you'll find educational. He claps his hands again, and immediately Praetorian guards appear from the shadows. Have they been there all along? Their bronze armor gleams dully in the lamplight, their expressions hidden behind their ceremonial masks. Escort our guests to the new wing, Caligula commands. It's phrased as a request, but the guards' hands rest on their sword hilts. There's no refusing this invitation. The procession through the palace corridors feels like a funeral march. Your sandals echo against marble floors, inlaid with patterns of dolphins and sea monsters. Past alcoves containing busts of dead emperors, whose stone eyes seem to follow your passage. The walls are painted with scenes from mythology: Apollo pursuing Daphne, Jupiter seducing mortal women, spiders chasing nymphs through enchanted forests. Tonight, these images feel less like decoration and more like prophecy. You pass through rooms you've never seen before, each more opulent than the last. One chamber contains a pool filled with perfumed water, where lotus blossoms float like tiny white boats. Another holds a collection of masks from across the empire. Egyptian death masks, Greek theater faces, barbarian war paint, captured from conquered tribes. The combined effect is unsettling, as if you're walking through the fever dreams of a mad artist. Here we are, Caligula announces as the procession stops before a set of double doors carved with reliefs of Dionysian scenes. Wine, drunk revelers, wild-haired Maenads, the god himself crowned with grape leaves. The doors are flanked by guards who step aside at their emperor's approach. My newest project, I call it Rome's True Heart. The doors swing open to reveal a sight that will burn itself into your memory forever. The room beyond is huge, its ceiling supported by columns of black marble, shot through with veins of gold. But it's not the architecture that stops your breath. It's what the room contains, arranged throughout the space of sleeping couches, but not the simple wooden frames used in ordinary bedchambers. These are works of art themselves. Ivory inlaid with precious stones, silk cushions dyed in colors that seem to glow in the lamplight, bronze frames, shaped like intertwined serpents or flowering vines. Between the couches, stand tables laden with cosmetics, perfumes, jewelry, and objects whose purpose you prefer not to contemplate. But the most shocking element is the people. Beautiful men and women in various states of undress move between the couches like figures in a living fresco. Some you recognize, daughters of patrician families, wives of knights, even the occasional son of a senator. Their eyes hold the hollow look of those who have learned that resistance only brings greater suffering. Welcome, Caligula announces with evident pride, to the true palace of the Roman people. Here, the nobility of Rome serves the empire in its most fundamental capacity. His laugh echoes off the marble walls. You see, I realize that our great families hoard their beauty like misses hoard gold. But beauty, like all resources, should be shared for the common good. Senator Marcus Aemilius makes us sound like a wounded animal. His daughter, barely 18 and married just 6 months ago, sits on one of the ivory couches, wearing nothing but jewelry. She doesn't meet her father's eyes, but her shoulders shake with silent sobs. The economics are quite elegant. Caligula continues conversationally, as if discussing tax policy. Each session generates revenue for the imperial treasury. The participants receive a share. Naturally, I'm not unreasonable. And the clients, well, they enjoy privileges that money alone could never buy. A man emerges from behind one of the columns, adjusting his toga. You recognize him? Lucius Vitellius, a wealthy merchant who's been trying to buy his way into senatorial rank. His face glows with satisfied lust and something worse. Pride. He nods respectfully to Caligula as he passes, as if acknowledging a successful business transaction. You see the beauty of it, Caligula says, noting your recognition and social mobility in its purest form. The merchant class gains access to aristocratic blood. The aristocrats contribute to imperial revenues, and Rome grows stronger through this mingling of essences. Your wife's hand in yours has gone completely cold. Around the room, you can hear other senators breathing like men who've been punched in the stomach. This isn't random cruelty. It's systematic, calculated, designed to break something fundamental in the Roman spirit. But surely, Senator Flavius stammers, his voice barely above a whisper. Surely this violates every principle of Roman virtue, every tradition of our ancestors. Our ancestors. Caligula's voice cuts through the air like a whip. Which ancestors? Flavius, the ones who raped the Sabine women, the ones who sold their daughters to secure political alliances, the ones who conquered half the world and made slaves of kings. He laughs, but there's no humor in it. Rome was built on violence and rape. My dear senator, I'm simply being honest about it. He walks among his guests now, studying their faces like a philosopher examining specimens. Besides, I'm doing this legally. Each person here signed a contract. Oh, yes. Proper Roman contracts witnessed and sealed. Some signed to pay debts. Did you know young Marcus there owed 500,000 doses to moneylenders? Others signed to save family members from charges of treason. A few signed simply because I asked them to, and they discovered that saying no to a god curry, the legal framework, makes it somehow worse. This isn't the random violence of a madman. It says the calculated cruelty of someone who understands exactly how to destroy people while staying within the letter of Roman law. A woman's laughter rings out from across the room, high and brittle. You turn to see a figure that makes your blood freeze. She's tall and elegant, with the kind of beauty that makes men start wars, wearing a stole of deep purple silk that marks her as imperial family. But there's something wrong with her eyes. They're too bright, too fixed, like those of a person seeing visions. Drusilla. Caligula breathes, and suddenly his whole demeanor changes. The calculating predator vanishes, replaced by something that might be love if it weren't so obviously twisted. My darling sister, you shouldn't be here. This isn't fit for your divine eyes. The woman, Drusilla, his sister, the one about whom the most vicious rumors circulate, glides toward him with movements that seem to flow like water. But, brother dear, she says in a voice like honey poured over broken glass, how can I stay away when you're showing our guests such? She reaches up to touch his face, and he leans into her palm like a cat, seeking warmth. The gesture would be touching between ordinary siblings. Between these two, it carries implications that make your skin crawl. Besides, she continues, her gaze sweeping across the assembled senators and their wives, I wanted to meet the women who've caught your attention, particularly. Her eyes settle on Cassius, his wife Livia, who stands frozen like a deer sensing wolves. This one. She's lovely, isn't she? Such perfect bone structure, such breeding. Drusilla circles Livia the way Caligula had earlier, but where his attention felt predatory. Hers feels like being examined by something not quite human. You know, brother, I've been thinking about mortality lately, about how brief beauty is in mortal women here today, wrinkled tomorrow, dust the day after. She pauses behind Livia, her hands hovering just above the woman's shoulders. The implication is clear to everyone in the room. This isn't just about sexual exploitation. It's about the imperial family's growing delusion of divinity. Their belief that ordinary human bonds and laws don't apply to them. Caligula's face lights up like a child, given an unexpected gift. You always understand, my darling. That's why the gods bless me with such a perfect sister. He takes her hands in his, and they stand there for a moment, looking into each other's eyes with an intensity that makes everyone else feel like voyeurs. Tell them, Drusilla whispers, but her voice carries clearly in the marble wall chamber. Tell them about the wedding. Wedding. The words slips out before you can stop it. Though, you immediately wish you'd stayed silent. Both imperial siblings turn toward you with smiles that don't reach their eyes. Oh, yes, Caligula says softly. We haven't made the announcement yet, have we, beloved? But you're all here now. Witnesses to history. He raises Drusilla's hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that lasts far too long. Rome will have a new Augusta soon. My sister has agreed to become my wife. The words hit the assembled senators like physical blows. Marriage between siblings has never been legal in Rome, barely even conceivable. It violates not just law, but the fundamental order of nature itself, the structure that separates civilization from barbarism. But Caesar, Senator Lepidus, manages his voice. Cracking the law forbids marriage between the law. Caligula's laugh echoes off the marble walls like the cry of a hunting bird. I am the law, Lepidus. I am Rome. When I speak, it becomes truth. When I desire something, it becomes necessary. When I love someone. He pulls Drusilla closer, his hands sliding to the small of her back with obvious possessiveness. When I love someone, they become divine. Drusilla leans against her brother's chest, her eyes closed as if savoring a private joke. The gods married their siblings. She murmurs. Zephyrus and Hera, of Cyrus and Isis, were simply following celestial precedent. Besides, Caligula adds his voice, taking on the tone of a teacher, explaining a simple concept to slow students. Royal blood must remain pure. You wouldn't mix the finest wine with vinegar, would you? You wouldn't breed thoroughbred horses with meals. His gaze sweeps across the senator's wives, and several of them step back instinctively. Only another child of the gods is worthy to share my bed permanently. The blasphemy is breathtaking in its scope. Not just the incest, though that's shocking enough, but the casual assumption of divinity, the reduction of everyone else to the level of animals or objects. You realize that in Caligula's mind, this room full of Rome's most powerful citizens represents nothing more than his personal collection of playthings. The ceremony will be magnificent, Drusilla says dreamily. Gold and purple everywhere. Processions through the city. Sacrifices to celebrate the union of earth and sky. She opens her eyes and looks directly at you. All of Rome's nobility will attend. Of course, it wouldn't be proper otherwise. And after the wedding, Caligula adds, with that same terrifying smile, we'll need to expand this little establishment. More rooms, more participants. A proper imperial brothel requires imperial scale. His hand gestures toward the assembled wives. I'm sure many of you ladies would be honored to contribute to such a noble endeavor. Your wife makes a sound like a trapped animal. Around the room, other women are backing toward the walls, as if the marble might offer some protection. The men stand frozen, caught between the impossible choice of protecting their families and preserving their own lives. But enough business talk. Caligula announces suddenly, we're here to enjoy ourselves. Guards, bring wine. The good stuff from chain music. Where are the musicians? He claps his hands and immediately the room fills with the sound of lyres and flutes. Though the music seems discordant of key, as if the very air in this place corrupts whatever it touches. Servants appear carrying silver trays laden with wine cups, but their movements are mechanical, their eyes carefully focused on nothing. You recognize some of them former slaves, who've earned their freedom, freemen who've worked their way up in the imperial household. Now they move like ghosts present, but not really there, as if they've learned to absent their souls from their bodies. The wine, when you're forced to accept a cup, tastes like liquid velvet, but leaves a bitter aftertaste. Everything in this place is like that, beautiful on the surface, poisonous underneath. A toast. Caligula raises his cup high, the wine dark as blood in the lamplight, to new beginnings, to the expansion of human experience, to the glorious future of Rome under divine guidance. The assembled senators lift their cups with the enthusiasm of men drinking hemlock. The wine slides down your throat like liquid guilt. Now, then, Caligula continues after draining his cup. Let's discuss the practical arrangements. I know you're all curious about how this will work going forward. He begins pacing again, but now his movements have the restless energy of a caged predator. First, the financial structure. Participation will be, let's call it, a civic duty, like military service or tax collection. But more pleasant sessions will be scheduled through my personal secretary. Rates will vary depending on rarity and specific requests. He stops in front of Senator Cassius, whose face has gone the color of old parchment. Your wife, for example, commands premium rates, that aristocratic bearing, those cheekbones that could cut glass, very popular with the equestrian class. His hand moves toward Livia's face, stopping just short of touching. Don't look so distressed. Cassius, think of it as your family's contribution to imperial revenue. Very patriotic. Livia herself has gone beyond pale into a kind of translucent whiteness, as if a spirit has already begun separating from her body. But her chin remains, raised her back straight. Whatever else she might be, she is Roman nobility, and she maintained her dignity even in hell. Of course. Caligula continues conversationally. There will be special arrangements for special occasions, state visits, diplomatic receptions, religious festivals. Nothing impresses foreign dignitaries quite like genuine Roman aristocracy. His smile widens, and the religious aspect is particularly important. As divine beings, Drusilla and I must ensure that proper rituals are observed. Drusilla nods sagely, as if this conversation involves nothing more controversial than temple maintenance schedules. The sacred marriage traditions go back to the dawn of time, she says. In that honey and glass voice, fertility rates, seasonal celebrations, offerings, to ensure that God's favor will simply be updating them for modern Rome. The implications are staggering. They're not just talking about prostitution. They're talking about turning it into state religion, making it a patriotic duty, weaving it into the very fabric of Roman society until resistance becomes not just dangerous, but literally treasonous. A new sound intrudes on the music. Footsteps in the corridor outside, accompanied by the clink of armor, more guards, or perhaps new guests arriving for this nightmare banquet. Through the doorway, you catch glimpses of more rooms opening off the main corridor, each one lit with the same warm, deceptive light. Oh, Caligula says, noting your attention. You're wondering about the full scope of the project. Well, why don't I show you? Consider it a guided tour of Rome's future. He gestures toward one of the side passages. This way, my honored guests. There's so much more to see. The forced march continues deeper into the palace complex. 3 rooms that seemed designed by someone who understands exactly how to corrupt beauty. One chamber contains a series of pools filled with water that shift color in the lamplight. Now blue, now green, now deep purple, that reminds you uncomfortably of fresh blood. Fathers move languidly through the tinted water, their movements graceful and somehow wrong. Another room holds what appears to be a library, but the scrolls on the shelves contain not philosophy or history, but detailed records, names, dates, descriptions that make your stomach turn. It's a catalogue of degradation, each entry written in the same careful script used for tax records or military reports. Documentation is crucial, Caligula explains, noting your horrified fascination. How else can we track efficiency? Monitor quality, ensure proper compensation. This is a business, after all, not some barbarian rape fest. His tone suggests he considers this distinction important, as if the bureaucratic framework somehow elevates the enterprise. The tour continues through chambers that blur together in your memory rooms full of costumes and masks. Chambers lined with mirrors that reflect candlelight into infinity spaces, where the air itself seems thick with perfume and despair. At each stop, Caligula provides commentary like a proud architect showing off his masterpiece. The genius of it, he explains, as you pass through a room where musicians play behind silk screens, their faces hidden, but their music providing a soundtrack to activities you try not to witness, is the way it breaks down all the old barriers. Senators, wife, mates, daughter, freedman, spouse, here, they're all just bodies serving Rome. Democracy in its purest form. Drusilla laughs at this. They sound like silver bells being shattered. Brother dear, you make it sound so philosophical. But isn't it really just about pleasure, about taking what we want? Because we can. She trails her fingers along the silk wall hangings as she walks her torch, leaving no mark, but somehow seeming to stain the fabric anyway. Pleasure. Yes, Caligula agrees, but transcendent pleasure, divine pleasure, the kind that lifts both participants above their mortal limitations. His eyes find your wife again, and she presses closer to your side like a child seeking protection from lightning. That's what you don't understand yet. This isn't degradation. It's elevation, apotheosis through abandon. The philosophical language makes it worse somehow, as if he's trying to transform horror into high art through the sheer force of rhetoric. But underneath the elegant words, the truth remains simple and brutal: power, taking whatever it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants. You emerge from the complex of rooms into what appears to be the palace's main atrium. But even this familiar space has been transformed. The traditional pool in the center now contains not water, but wine, dark red wine that catches the light like liquid garnets. Rose petals float on its surface, and the air shimmers with aromatic steam rising from its heated depths. The wine pool was Drusilla, the idea Caligula says proudly inspired by stories of Cleopatra's milk baths, but with a properly Roman twist. We host ceremonies here, initiation rites for new participants, celebrations of particularly successful evenings. Religious observance is honoring Dionysus and Venus, as if summoned by his words. Figures begin emerging from the shadows around the pool's perimeter. They are dressed in flowing robes that seem to be made of liquid starlight, but their movements have the careful precision of trained performers. You realize these aren't random revelers. They are part of some kind of organized ritual. Perfect timing. Drusilla claps her hands together with childlike delight. The evening ceremony is about to begin. You'll get to see the full spiritual dimension of our work. The robed figures begin to arrange themselves around the wine pool in a complex pattern that might be choreography or might be some kind of arcane geometry. They are chanting in a language you don't recognize. Possibly Greek, possibly something older and stranger. The sound rises and falls like waves breaking against a distant shore. The old gods are awakening, Caligula says softly, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. For too long, Rome has pretended to be civilized, ordered, rational. But civilization is just a thin shell over chaos, and chaos is where the real power lies. He moves closer to the pool, his eyes reflecting the wine. Dark surface, through ritual, through abandon, through the complete surrender of social pretense. We access that power. One of the rogue figures, a woman. You think, though it's hard to tell in the shifting light, begins to disrobe at the pool's edge. Her movements are slow, ritualized, as if she's performing steps learned through years of practice. Other participants follow her lead, their clothes falling away like shed skins. The wine represents transformation, Drusilla explains in a tone that might be used for describing a religious mystery, which perhaps it is. Those who bathe in it are washed clean of their old identities, their old limitations. They become something new, something more than human. The naked figures slip into the wine pool with barely a splash, and the liquid accepts them like a living thing. They move through it with languid grace, their skin stained purple-red, their hair dark with wine. The effect is both beautiful and deeply disturbing. Human beings transformed into something that belongs more in myth than reality. Would you like to participate? Caligula asks suddenly, his attention focusing on your group with laser intensity. The experience is transcendent, life-changing. Many of our regular participants began as skeptics, but the wine changes everything. The offer hangs in the air like incense, heavy and intoxicating. Several of the senators shift uncomfortably, and you can almost see them calculating risks and consequences to refuse and face immediate punishment, accept and lose something that can never be recovered. Perhaps, Senator Flavius says carefully, his voice barely steady, we should observe first to better understand the spiritual significance of the ritual. Wise Caligula nods approvingly. Understanding should always precede participation. Very Roman of you, Flavius. But his smile suggests this is only a temporary reprieve. Besides, we have other entertainment planned for this evening. He claps his hands once more, and the sound echoes strangely in the marble-walled space. Immediately, servants appear carrying what appear to be theater masks, comedy and tragedy, but crafted from precious metals and gems that make them seem to glow within a light masks. Drusilla explains with obvious pleasure, allow us to become anyone, anything. The shy senator's wife becomes a passionate courtesan. The stern patriarch becomes a playful satyr. Identity becomes fluid. She accepts a golden mask from one of the servants, holding it up to catch the light. Reality becomes negotiable. The masks are distributed among the group, with the same terrible inevitability as everything else in this place. Yours is silver worked with intricate designs that hurt to look at directly when you hold it up. The eye holes seem to peer back at you with a life of their own. Put them on, Caligula commands. And now his voice carries no pretense of politeness. Become who you truly are. Underneath all that Roman dignity, the assembled senators and their wives donned the masks with the reluctance of condemned prisoners accepting blindfolds. The transformation is immediate and unsettling. Familiar faces disappear behind alien visages, personalities seeming to shift along with appearances through the silver masks' eye holes. The world takes on a different quality. Colors seem more vivid. Sounds more intense. Moral boundaries less distinct. You find yourself wondering if the masks are somehow drugged, if the metal itself carries some kind of intoxicating property. Better, Caligula says with satisfaction. Much better. Now you begin to see his god, see beyond the petty categories of right and wrong. Beyond the artificial constraints of law and custom, his own mask is gold, worked with patterns of grapevines and serpents, transforming him from merely frightening into something genuinely otherworldly. The evening continues in a blur of wine and perfume, and half-glimpsed activities that your mind refuses to fully process. The masks seem to give everyone permission to act on impulses they've spent lifetimes suppressing, as if the metal faces somehow absorbed responsibility for whatever their wearers do. You lose track of time, of sequence, of causation. Events happen around you and to you, but they feel like things happening to someone else, someone wearing your mask, but not sharing your soul. Through it all, Caligula and Drusilla move like twin centers of a storm that presents transforming everyone around them into something less and more than human. At some point, hours later, minutes, you find yourself back in the original dining chamber, though it too has been transformed. The orderly arrangement of couches has given way to a more organic sprawl of bodies and furniture and discarded clothing. The careful boundaries between senator and knight, between noble wife and freedman's daughter, have dissolved in wine and darkness. Your wife sits beside you, still wearing her mask, but somehow diminished, as if essential parts of her have been carved away during the evening's activities. When she looks at you, you see nothing familiar in her eyes, just reflection and emptiness. Beautiful, isn't it? Drusilla appears beside your couch like a purple-clad ghost, her own mask pushed up onto her forehead, so her face shows pale and ethereal in the lamplight. The way civilization just melts away when you apply the right heat, like wax, like snow in sunlight. She gestures toward the sprawl of bodies around the room, senators and slaves, intermingled without distinction. This is how Rome really works. You know all the laws and customs and traditions. They're just performance art. Underneath, it's always been about power and desire, and the strong taking what they want from the weak. But surely you begin, though your voice sounds strange and distant through the mask. Surely nothing. She interrupts with a laugh that sounds like breaking crystal. Look around you. These are Rome's finest citizens, its moral guardians, its pillars of virtue, and look what they become, with just a little encouragement. What does that tell you about the nature of virtue itself? The question hangs in the wind, thick hair, unanswerable because the answer is too terrible to contemplate. Around you, people you've known for years act out scenarios that would have been unthinkable just hours ago. Their identities dissolved in the chemical baths of Caligula's twisted vision. The wedding will be soon. Drusilla continues conversationally, as if discussing flower arrangements, rather than the systematic destruction of Roman society. After that, these little gatherings will become official state functions. Participation will be mandatory for anyone seeking imperial favor. The old Rome will die completely and something new, something honest will take its place. She moves away, then sliding between the scattered bodies like a shark through bloody water. You watch her go, noting how she pauses here and there to whisper in someone's ear or trail her fingers across an exposed shoulder, each touch somehow seeming to claim ownership. The night continues. If it is still night, time has lost all meaning. In this place where natural rhythms seem suspended, servants appear and disappear like ghosts, bringing fresh wine and removing the remnants of dignity. The music never stops, though it seems to change without anyone noticing, shifting from Roman melodies to something older and more primal. You find yourself thinking about history, about the stories told of mad emperors and fallen empires. But those were always distant tales, cautionary fables about other times and places. This is immediate, personal. The corruption of everything you thought was solid and permanent. At some point you realize you're no longer wearing the mask. When did you remove it? Or did someone else remove it for you? The questions feel important, but also strangely irrelevant, as if the mask was never the real problem anyway. Thornlight begins to filter through the high windows, grey and dirty, after the warm gold of oil lamps. The natural illumination reveals the full scope of the night's transformation. Clothing scattered like battlefield detritus, wine steins that look like dried blood faces that belong to people you no longer recognize. Time to go, Caligula announces, cheerfully appearing, as if from nowhere, with the casual authority of a host ending a dinner party. Dawn breaks, And with it comes another day of imperial business. But don't worry, we'll gather again soon. Very soon, the assembled senators begin the process of reassembling themselves. Finding clothes, locating spouses, attempting to reconstruct the dignity that seems to have evaporated during the night's activities. But the damage is more than cosmetic. Something fundamental has shifted, some essential boundary crossed. Your wife takes your arm as you prepare to leave, but her touch feels different. Lighter, as if she's no longer fully present in her own body. When you meet her eyes, you see a kind of hollowness there, as if crucial parts of her soul have been excavated during the night. Don't look so troubled, Caligula says, appearing at your shoulder with his uncanny ability to sense distress. You'll adjust. Everyone does. The alternative is unpleasant. His hand rests on your shoulder with deceptive lightness, but you can feel the strength in those fingers. The casual power of someone who could crush you without effort. Remember, he continues, his voice carrying clearly, despite its softness. What happens in the palace stays in the palace. Oh, not because of any loyalty to me, I'm not that naive, but because admitting what occurred here would require admitting what you va become, and that would destroy you more surely than any sword. The truth of his words hits like a physical blow. You can't report this to the Senate without implicating yourself, can't seek justice without confessing participation, can't even run without abandoning everything you've worked for, everyone you're responsible for protecting. You see, Caligula's smile widens. I told you the wine changes everything, not because it's magical, though it is rather good wine, but because it reveals truth, and truth once revealed can never be hidden again. The walk home through Rome's early morning streets feels like traveling between worlds. The city looks the same, vendors setting up stalls, slaves carrying water, citizens beginning their daily. The walk home through Rome's early morning streets feels like traveling between worlds. The city looks the same. Vendors setting up stalls, slaves carrying water, citizens beginning their daily routines. But you feel like a ghost haunting a familiar place, your wife's hand in yours. As cold as marble, and when she speaks, her voice carries the hollow quality of someone who has glimpsed the void beneath civilization. 3 days passed in a haze of wine and memory. You attend Senate meetings where men you've known for decades avoid meeting your eyes, their faces wearing the same carefully blank expression you see in your own mirror. The usual debates about green subsidies and provincial taxes but underneath the familiar rhetoric lurks a new knowledge. Rome's laws and traditions are parchment, thin barriers that can be torn away in a single evening. On the 4th morning, a sealed scroll arrives at your villa. The imperial seal bears Caligula's mark, his name in Greek, the language he prefers for official correspondence. Your hands tremble as you break the wax to our beloved senator and his distinguished wife. The message reads in Caligula's precise handwriting. We cordially invite you to honor us with your presence at a private ceremony tomorrow evening. The occasion, the formal announcement of our divine union with our sister Drusilla, now recognized as Diva Drusilla Panther, by senatorial decree. This sacred marriage will mark a new age for Rome, one where the boundaries between mortal and divine, between human law and divine, between human law and celestial, will dissolve in the fire of transcendent love. The scroll continues with details that make your stomach turn. Specifications for dress white robes, symbolizing spiritual purification. Timing, the 9th hour, when earthly and celestial realms align, and most disturbingly, instructions for ritual preparation that involve fasting and the symbolic washing away of old loyalties. Your wife reads over your shoulder, her breathing shallow. We can't go, she whispers. Not after what we saw. But you both know refusal is impossible. The invitation is a command, and commands from God, especially those who wear the purple, are not requests. The imperial palace has been transformed for the occasion. The main atrium, where you witness the wine pool ceremony, now contains an altar of white marble, veined with gold. Incense burns in braziers, shaped like eagles, and the air shimmers, heat and perfume. Senators in their finest white togas, standing careful, rows. Their wives beside them, installers of embroidered silk. But the effect is less celebratory than funereal. Caligula stands before the altar, wearing robes of Tyrian purple, so dark they appear black in the lamplight. Drusilla, now officially Diva Drusilla Panther, wears a garment that seems woven from starlight itself. her auburn hair crowned with laurel and myrtle. The ritual they're performing isn't Roman marriage, but something older and stranger, drawing from Egyptian and Greek traditions of divine kingship. "Welcome, beloved subjects," Caligula announces, his voice carrying the particular resonance he uses for public proclamation. "Tonight, you witnessed history, not the petty history of emperors and armies, but cosmic history, the marriage of earth and sky, of mortal flesh and divine essence." The ceremony proceeds through invocations that make your skin crawl. Caligula and Drusilla speak vows that references us, Hera, Cyrus, and Isis, the sibling marriages of ancient gods that civilized Rome has always viewed as barbaric. But the assembled senators stand unmoving, trapped between horror and the instinct for self-preservation. Gods married their sisters to preserve the purity of divine blood. Mortals called it unnatural, but mortals call many things unnatural that are simply beyond their understanding. She turns to face the assembled nobility. Her eyes in the candlelight. Tonight, that understanding expands. Tonight, Rome learns that what was once forbidden becomes sacred when undertaken by those who walk between worlds. The ceremony concludes with an announcement that makes several senators gasp aloud: a new imperial decree that will forever change Roman society. Caligula produces a scroll bearing the Senate's official seal. Though everyone knows the senators present never voted on this measure, effective immediately, he proclaims, Rome will implement a revolutionary system of taxation. All earnings from intimate commerce will be subject to imperial assessment. This includes not just professional companions, but anyone who receives compensation for physical affection. The implications hit like a physical blow. He is not just legalizing prostitution, he is mandating it, turning every Roman household into potential revenue stream. The clause about matrimony should not be exempt means that married women can be compelled into this taxed profession. Their husbands transformed into pimps by imperial decree. Rates will be calculated per embrace. Caligula continues conversationally, as if discussing import duties. 1/20th of all compensation payable to the imperial treasury clerks will be stationed at appropriate venues to ensure proper accounting. Senator Memphis Regulus, whose wife Lola, Paulina Caligula, had forcibly married and then divorced, stands rigid beside his current wife. The humiliation has become systematic, institutionalized, woven into the fabric of Roman law itself. The wedding feast that follows takes you back to the chamber of horrors you've tried to forget. But now it's been expanded and formalized. The palace brothel, Suetonius says, rooms, furnished to suit the grandeur of the place, now occupies an entire wing with the bureaucratic efficiency of a government office. Pages in imperial livery circulate through the crowd, carrying ledgers, taking names and recording transactions. The matrons and freeborn youth, standing exposed, where the expressions of those who have learned that dignity is a luxury Rome can no longer afford. Some you recognize, daughters of patrician families, wives of men you've served within the Senate, even the occasional son, who has the kind of beauty that transcends gender. Beautiful, isn't it? Caligula appears beside you, wine cup in hand, surveying his empire of vice with the satisfaction of a man who has solved a complex problem. The old Rome pretended that desire could be controlled, that virtue could be legislated. But desire is like water, it finds its own level, carves its own channels. He gestures toward a corner where a young woman, you recognize her as the daughter of Senator Aemilia, stands beside a clerk, who records something in his ledger while a Eurasian merchant examines her like livestock. She owes 600,000 substances to moneylenders. Her father couldn't pay, so she is working off the debt. Very efficient, really. The old system would have meant slavery, maybe execution. This way everyone benefits. The merchant nods approvingly, hands over a pouch of coins and leads the girl toward one of the ivory inlaid rooms. The clerk makes another notation, already calculating the imperial share. Of course, Caligula continues, noting your expression. Some prefer to think of this as degradation. The degradation is just another word for transformation. These women and men are being transformed into resources that serve the empire. Very Roman, when you think about it. We always did know how to utilize every available resource. The evening's final horror comes when Caligula leads the assembled company to the palace's private temple, where a statue of Drusilla stands draped in purple and gold. The effigy is disturbingly lifelike, carved from marble that seems to glow within a light, and you realize with a start that it was probably modeled from life, perhaps even cast from her actual body. Behold, Caligula announces his voice, taking on the cadence of a priest delivering revelation. Diva Drusilla Panther, first Roman woman to be recognized as divine by senatorial decree. Not just divine universal, all-encompassing, the feminine principle made manifest in imperial flesh. The ceremony that follows blends Roman, Egyptian, and Greek elements into something that feels fundamentally alien. Caligula offers prayers to his sister, not wife goddess, invoking her in terms that make it clear their relationship transcends mortal categories. The senators are required to participate, offering incense and making obeisance before a shrine that represents everything their ancestors died to protect. Rome from tomorrow, Caligula says. As the ceremony concludes, we begin the expansion. New locations throughout the city, proper temples, not just the palace. Every neighborhood will have access to imperial services. Every citizen will understand that in the new Rome, pleasure is not just permitted, but required. Dawn finds you walking home through streets that look unchanged but feel fundamentally different. The baker's wife greets you with the same smile, the same fresh bread. But you find yourself wondering if she's calculated the imperial tax on her smiles. The fishmonger's daughter, who once brought joy with her laughter, now seems carry the weight of potential obligation. Your wife doesn't speak during the journey, but her silence communicates more than words. She's been changed, not broken, exactly, but transformed into someone who understands that the world has shifted on its axis. The Rome you thought you knew, the Rome of laws and traditions and gradual progress, has been replaced by something older and stranger. 3 days later, you receive another imperial summons. This time, it's not for a banquet or ceremony, but for a working session. Caligula's term for the new bureaucratic apparatus he's creating. The palace now contains offices where clerks calculate tax revenues from prostitution, where architects plan new temple brothels, where lawyers draft contracts that transform Roman citizens into imperial assets. The systematic nature of the corruption is what makes it most terrifying. This isn't the random cruelty of a madman. It's the calculated restructuring of Roman society around principles that would have horrified your grandfathers. Every transaction, every relationship, every family bond becomes subject to imperial taxation and regulation. As you prepare for bed that night, your wife finally speaks. Do you remember the story of Tarquin and Lucretia? How her rape led to the expulsion of the kings and the founding of the Republic. You're not understanding her meaning. The mythic pattern repeats: tyranny, breeding resistance, corruption, giving birth to revolution. But this time the tyranny isn't just sexual violence against individuals. It's the systematic transformation of an entire civilization, the weaponization of human desire itself. How long? She asks simply. You think of the other senators, their haunted eyes and careful conversations, of the careful network of alliances and obligations that holds Roman society together, of the legions stationed throughout the empire. Their loyalty tested by Anne, who treats their wives and daughters as imperial property. Not long, you reply, though whether you speak of Caligula's reign or Rome's survival, you are not certain. Outside Rome sleeps fitfully, dreaming of a future where gods walk among mortals and pleasure becomes indistinguishable from obligation. The old republic is dead, murdered. Not by foreign invasion or civil war, but by the systematic application of imperial will to the most intimate aspects of human life. Tomorrow will bring new horrors, new degradations, new ways of transforming citizens into subjects and love into commerce. But tonight, in the privacy of your own bed, you cling to the one thing Caligula has not yet found a way to tax or regulate: the simple human dignity of refusing to let horror become normal. It may not be enough to save Rome, but it's all you have left.